Many people fall into the trap on spending significant amounts of money on their co-branded credit card just because they're loyal to that program. That's usually a really bad idea, and even if you're loyal to a specific program, you can actually get more value in that program by spending on other credit cards. My name is Sean, and I'm here with my co-host.
Hi, everyone. This is Sherwin. So, on today's episode of the Credit Card BS podcast, we're going to talk about stop spending on co-branded credit cards. Now, by co-branded credit cards, we're usually talking about hotel and airline cards here. Cards that give you rewards for spending for that kind of loyalty program. Now, of course, there are other co-branded credit cards like, Gap and Sephora and those really trash store cards, which you should never get, by the way, just for the record. But we're going to focus on like the travel co-branded cards. And let's start first by explaining the co-branded card is and how it compares to a transferable currency cards, which are the other types of cards we're going to focus on today to do a little comparison. So Sean, why don't you get us started with that?
So co-branded cards are cards usually specifically into one hotel or airline program. So for example, the World of Hyatt card, you earn Hyatt points. You don't earn any other transferable points. You earn points just in that program. If it's an airline card like United, you earn only United points. Whereas a transferable points card, such as like the Chase Sapphire Preferred, Chase Sapphire Reserve, Amex Platinum, Citi Premier, or Capital One Venture X, those are transferable points, meaning you can send your points from the bank over to your preferred airline or hotel program of choice, and your options will depend based on the bank. And that can be really nice because you're not stuck into one specific program. You have a variety of options.
Yes. So as an example, if I earn 70,000 Chase points, those Chase points, assuming you have a Sapphire card or an Inc. Preferred, those 70,000 points can become 70,000 Southwest points. They can be 70,000 United points. They can become 70,000 Hyatt points. You can do those transfers. But if I earn 70,000 Southwest points, those don't go back to any other currency or any other thing. So you have less flexibility. Now, so what are the problems with spending on co-branded credit cards? One of my biggest issues is that oftentimes on co-branded credit cards, you typically only earn 1x points, so 1 point per dollar on your spend in that program. And maybe you might earn some 2x points on certain categories like dining, but even that falls below standard. Now, you might be like, for example, if I want Hyatt points, the Hyatt credit card earns 1x and the Chase Sapphire Preferred also earns 1x. There's like no difference, right? But that's actually incorrect because usually these transferable currency cards have a whole ecosystem where you can get much better multipliers. For example, I can earn 1.5x points on the Chase Freedom Unlimited or the Inc. Unlimited. Those points can be pulled together with my Sapphire Preferred points, and then I can be transferring out them to Hyatt. So ironically, using the Hyatt credit card will only let me 1x points. But if I use the Chase Trifecta properly, I can earn 1.5x points that can become those Hyatt points. And generally, the expectation is that you should be earning 1.5 to 2x on your non-category spends. So if you're in a Citi or Capital One system, even the Amex system with the Blue Business Plus, you're getting 2x on all non-category spend. Whereas with these co-branded cards, you're getting 1x. And then on like the category spends, for example, the United card, the Hyatt cards, those earn 2x on dining, but that's actually pretty subpar for dining. You should be thinking about getting 3 to 5x on those types of cards. So Sean, any other examples come to mind?
No, I think, really the only case in which these, co-branded cards offer competitive multipliers might, and this is a keyword, might be only in the category of which like the program it's associated with. So even on airline cards though, like if you're spending on like a United card, you don't earn that many United points, even on United purchases. Sometimes it'll be like 2x. And that's just not very competitive when you can spend on like other cards, such as like an Amex Platinum for airfare, and earn 5x transferable points, which are more valuable. However, for certain like hotel co-branded cards, like the World of Hyatt card or the IHG card, you can earn a decent multiplier on the spending within that hotel chain. So like the World of Hyatt card gets 4x on Hyatt spending, which is a very competitive multiplier for, Hyatt hotel spending. But for not for very specific like niche categories, the multipliers are just like entirely uncompetitive.
Yeah, I think one way I like to think about this that, kind of helps click it for some people is, the standard on the market right now is 2% cashback, no annual fee, right? So when you decide to put spend on a co-branded card that earns 1x points instead of on that 2% cashback, you effectively gave up the opportunity to earn 2 cents in exchange for that 1 point. So you purchased a point at 2 cents per point. That is very expensive for how much points are worth. So I think when you're if you're just thinking, oh, 1x, 2x, not a big deal, that might feel that way. But if you're in the mindset of, what is the opportunity cost, you're actually spending way too much money effectively purchasing these points on co-branded credit cards. It's rarely a good deal, in my opinion.
Yeah, and a lot of times, like, people, they'll always go like, oh, I don't buy points, don't buy points. But that's what you're doing anyways. Whenever you put spend on a cashback card or put spend on a points card, you're buying points. The question is just what rate are you buying the points at? It's all the same game. It's really just about like what specific figure are you paying? And yeah, 2 cents per point for pretty much any points currency is pretty much just a ripoff.
Yes. I think another factor to consider is that you have less flexibility with these co-branded credit cards compared to transferable currency cards. And this is the idea of us not wanting to put all of our eggs in one basket. Sean, why don't you talk a little bit about the risk someone might take on if they put most of their spend on co-branded credit cards?
Yeah, so let's say like you're a huge United fan. And so you get the United card and you put all your points in United. And then guess what? United devalues yet again because they keep doing that. And the points become very, very, not valuable over time. You just have no options. You're just stuck with those points and you have to pay more, a higher cost. But if it's in a transferable program, let's say it was in Chase, you still have the option to send them to United if you need, United points. But let's say United points become even more trash. Well, guess what? Now you don't have to send them to United. You can keep them in Chase for as long as you need, and then you can transfer it out to your program of choice. So you're really risking quite a lot by having, a significant points balance in one specific currency. Now, I will say this is one of those things that a lot of people can overblow the risk on this. So for example, like Hyatt points, I have a significant Hyatt points balance. I don't mind earning Hyatt points. Could the program devalue in the future? Yes. But historically, Hyatt has shown us that like if they are going to devalue, they'll give us a notice usually. And so there's like a certain degree of trust with that. But for some of these like dynamically priced programs like United or Delta or something, I have zero trust in these programs. They could devalue at any moment, at any time, without any notice. So I feel like there's a much higher risk of having higher points balances in those type of programs, ones that have been shown to like, devalue or change without any notice. If a program like historically has been telling me like, hey, we're going to update our rates and they give you time to redeem, that I feel safer in than a program that does not do that.
Yeah, and also you just have more optionality when you have these transferable currency cards. Oftentimes the same flight can be booked with multiple partners because of airline alliances. And it's hard to say for sure that which program you book with costs the least number of points or has the most favorable policies one way or another. So, you kind of have to hedge your bets on one particular partner and hope that it works for your travel. Whereas with these transferable currency cards, you can kind of pick and choose, oh, for this flight, it costs X amount of points if I book with this partner, fewer number of points on that partner. I'm going to transfer to that one instead of being locked into the first one. And another benefit, I think, and this is true for Chase and Citi especially, is that they allow you to just redeem your points for cash back, 1 cent per point. I don't necessarily recommend this strategy because you could often get more value, but it's still at least there as like a safety valve, like an escape hatch if you decide that, trying to figure out transfer partners is no longer for you, at least you can kind of redeem some value from those points at like a fair rate instead of being screwed over with points that are just kind of permanently locked into a program. Shaw, why don't you also talk about the factor of like expiration dates on these?
Yeah, so for
points?
some of these programs, like these, individual airline or hotel programs, they may have requirements to keep your points active, and some may just have points expire every so often. And so that's something that, like, if you're not someone that's, constantly keeping your account active, if you're not keeping track of this, your points could expire. But in pretty much any of the transferable points currencies systems, points don't expire as long as you have an active open account, or like in your your points then will pool like Amex, your points pool across all your MR accounts. For Chase, you can transfer freely between your UR accounts. So if you close a card, you could just transfer it to another one. And so it really is not like the same level of concern if you are earning points in a transferable points program as opposed to like an individual airline. There's also the argument to be made like some of these co-branded cards have pretty weak travel protections. So like if I have an airline card and I book my flight on that airline to earn, some more airline miles, but like something goes wrong and I want some travel protection, a lot of times like they don't have anything good. Whereas these transferable points cards like an Amex Platinum, Chase Sapphire Reserve, Venture X have better travel protections. So if I were to have paid for that airfare with one of those cards, which often earn more points than the airline card, then not only am I earning more points, but I'm also getting a greater level of protection where if my flight's delayed, okay, I can go, if my flight's delayed a certain amount of time or canceled, okay, I can go get a hotel, I can get some food, I need a new pair of clothes, and it would be covered by that travel insurance, whereas you're just totally out of luck on a like standard co-branded card.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's so ironic that by having these weaker travel protections, sometimes the airlines don't even properly incentivize you to spend their own flights on that very card. So, I usually try to put it on one of the cards with better protections. So let's talk about some examples that, might come up when deciding what card to use. So like, again, I already mentioned this, big mistake for you to put most of your airline credit cards on like your United or Delta. Delta cards are really popular in this country for some reason, even though, again, you're earning 1x. Delta Sky Miles are worth very little, like 1.2 cents per point or something like that. And they've pretty much gotten rid of any good redemption or aspirational, redemption that they have. Like literally, you would be doing better putting your spend on the 2% cash back card and just earning cash back than putting it on your Delta 1x. Another example is actually, I think, a pretty big trap for many people. So IHG and Hilton credit cards offer 3x spend on your everyday category. Now you might think, 3x on everything. That's pretty competitive. Sean, tell us why that's not really the case.
It's not competitive because that is equivalent. You can just buy Hilton points or IHG points at half a cent each on sale. So that's equivalent to earning like 1.5%, right? But 1.5x on a transferable points card is much better than 1.5% worth of IHG or Hilton points. Because with the transferable points card, you could literally just get cash back for 1.5%, which, I would rather take 1.5% cash than 1.5% worth of Hilton or, IHG points that I could just buy at that rate. And then also with like the Hilton and IHG points, they're just not very valuable at that rate, right? The points currencies are so inflated that you're just not earning nearly as much as you think you are. It's not like, I'm going to go spend a bunch of money on a base category. Like, for example, you spend $30,000 on a Hilton card at 3x. Okay, great. I get one nice night on that. But you could have earned so much more by putting it on more valuable, higher multiplier cards.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, if you just think about it from the straight cents per point perspective, again, you can buy these points at half cent per point. So you're kind of earning 1.5% back on this 3x category. Whereas if I'm putting it on like a 2x transferable currency card, like the Amex Blue Business Plus, those points are worth, I say fairly like 2 cents per point. So you're getting 4% return as opposed to 1.5% return. So don't be fooled by the 3x on these hotel cards. Now, that being said, there can be situations where it does rationally make sense to spend on co-branded credit cards. And we're going to go into a few of these sort of exceptions. The first one is if you're meeting a welcome bonus. Oftentimes cards will give you 60,000 to 80,000 points or miles in that program after spending like 4,000 in the first 3 months. And I would say, yeah, it does make sense to put those first 4,000 or so on that card because the welcome bonus is still going to be huge and will offset those multipliers from other cards. Another situation where it can make sense to spend on co-branded credit cards is to earn free night certificates. Sean, why don't you talk about a few of these cards that have that feature?
So a lot of credit cards on the hotel side, if you spend like a certain threshold, you'll get a certificate night ranging in quality for that chain. So for example, the Hyatt card, if you spend 15K, you get a category 1 to 4 certificate. If you spend 15K on a Hilton Surpass, you'll get a Hilton free night certificate, which works at any Hilton property in the world pretty much, as long as there's standard room availability. And so that can actually totally like change the numbers, because if you're, let's say you're only earning 3x in the Hilton card, but then you spend that 15K and get the free night. Well, that free night could be worth 120,000 points at some of the nice hotels like Waldorf Cabo. So that can totally, change the field for you. And I think another one as well that makes it really interesting to use these co-branded cards is if you're trying to earn status. So for some of these cards, they will make it a lot easier to earn status on that program if you spend a lot on the card. So for example, if you spend about $200,000 on an AA card, which is a lot of money, no question, but you would have top tier executive platinum status, even if you're not earning like any category multipliers or whatever, because you're earning that loyalty point as well when you're spending on it. So like, okay, if you're spending a lot of money, whether you have like a business or something, hey, top tier American Airlines status. Or you spend about 120,000 or even a little less on a Hyatt credit card, that's top tier global status with all the milestone rewards, because you earn Hyatt Elite Night credits every time you spend in an increment of like $5,000. Delta, you can achieve, Delta's a little worse of an example, but you can still get pretty high status by earning the medallion qualifying dollars on their co-branded card. IHG Diamond, you can get by only spending 40,000 on the card, which is a pretty low threshold to attain top tier status. So if you're going for status, if you're going after like a milestone reward or something on these cards, it could totally change the entire equation for you. Because look, if, $120,000 on a Hyatt card, if you're earning like 1x Hyatt points, that isn't that great right off the bat, right? Okay, totally admit that's not that great. But you throw in, okay, now I have globalist status and I have all the milestones, meaning I have an extra Cat 1 to 4 on top of the previous Cat 1 to 4 we discussed. I now get the 4 suite upgrade awards. I get a category 1 to 7. I get a Hyatt concierge access, right? That's like significantly valuable as a perk. So you really change up the whole like mathematical, on this. Like it can make a lot more sense, but it really depends like how much you're spending. Because if you're not spending enough to, attain these levels of status or get these like milestones, then it's really not worth it.
Yes, I completely agree with those points. I just have 2 quick caveats. One is like, don't overestimate how much status is worth to you. I feel like a lot of people spend a lot of time and energy chasing airline status, for example, even though they don't fly that airline that often. So for example, if you're going for the American Airlines status, you should ask yourself, like, do I fly American that often? Because otherwise, putting all the spend just for a few trips may not be worth it. The other thing is to keep in mind is not all statuses are the same in terms of how much they're worth. For example, you can get IHG Diamond by spending 40K on the IHG Premier and Premier business cards. You can also get Hilton Diamond by spending 40K on the Hilton Surpass card. The value proposition is very different. I would say it's not worth it at all for Hilton, because you could just get the Hilton Aspire card, which has a higher annual fee, but you get Diamond instantly without having to put any spend. Whereas, IHG, the only real way to get Diamond status with credit card spend is putting that 40K. So then I think it's more reasonable to pursue that route. So don't assume all the statuses are the same. One last thing I'll throw in there, sometimes the multiplier can be just like that competitive, where it might make sense to spend on co-branded credit cards. So one notable one we talked about is the Wyndham Business Earner card, where you can earn 8x points uncapped on gas. Now, Sean, how would you evaluate the value of Wyndham points? I know they used to be really good with the Vacasa redemption, but with the recent devaluation, what are your thoughts on putting gas spend on this card?
Yeah, I mean, the points to me are so much less valuable now with the total like double devaluation of Vacasa we've seen recently. I would still say it could be worth it because 8x is still a pretty high multiplier, and to buy the points, it's a little under 1 cent a piece. So you're talking about like a 6% effective kind of return on spend for that. I still find it worth it because, and the only exception would be if you have like another competitive gas card. So like, I would prefer to earn 4x on the Amex Business Gold as opposed to 8x on the Wyndham Business Earner. But if you don't have an Amex Business Gold, because they're fairly hard to justify long term, then I think doing the gas on the Wyndham Business Earner like makes a lot of sense. So I think that's like, there are certain exceptions where if you get like a card that has like one category that actually does have like a pretty high multiplier, then yeah, definitely it can make sense to do that, because there's not that many great gas cards out there.
Yeah, I would say like, oh, first of all, I kind of disagree that the minimum value is 6% because you can transfer Wyndham points to Caesar. So if you go to Vegas at all, like you can get a floor of 1 cent per point, those Wyndham points, because they're just worth 1 cent per point for dining and stays in Vegas and Caesars. Additionally, I would say consider how much gas spend you have. So like if you're within like $500 a month, the city custom cash may be the better choice because you just get 5% back that can be used for anything. It can actually become 5x thank you points that can be transferred. Whereas this 8x is uncapped. So if you do a lot of trucking, for example, and have a lot of spend, maybe this will make more sense. Yeah, overall, these few cases aside, we generally recommend transferable currency cards. We've talked about them a lot on our podcast, and hopefully this episode made clear as to why they're often a much better option than co-branded credit cards. So I think we'll wrap up here. Thank you all for listening to today's episode. If you enjoyed, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. It really helps us out a ton. If you're interested in getting any credit card we mentioned today, or any card for that matter, please consider using the referral links in the description below. It greatly helps support this channel. You have no idea. Sean, why don't you plug our Discord?
Yes, so if you want to connect with an elite group of award travelers 100% for free and learn a ton, check out the Travel Lane Discord group at the link in the description. 100% for free. You will learn so much, I promise. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you next week.